Having a crush feels simple on the surface, but inside your mind, it is anything but simple. It feels like a small emotion, a soft attraction, a cute liking for someone. But in reality, when you have a crush on someone, your entire brain starts working differently. Your thoughts change, your focus shifts, your emotions intensify. And slowly, without you even noticing, your mind starts building an entire emotional world around one person. And the most interesting part is this. Most people think a crush is just liking someone. But a crush is actually a combination of psychology, chemistry, imagination, memory, and emotional projection all happening at the same time. So let's break down what really happens when you have a crush. It usually starts very suddenly. You don't plan it, you don't decide it. You don't wake up one day and say, "Today I will like this person." Instead, it happens naturally. You see someone, you notice something about them. Maybe their smile, their voice, their confidence, their energy, or even a small gesture. And something inside you reacts. But that reaction is not love. It is not deep connection. It is attention. Your brain simply says, "This is interesting." And that interesting feeling is the beginning of everything. Once your brain marks someone as interesting, your attention system activates. Suddenly, you start noticing them more. Even if they are not trying to get your attention, your mind automatically focuses on them. If they walk into a room, you notice. If they speak, you listen more carefully. If they are online, you check. If they don't respond, you think about it. This is not coincidence. This is selective attention. Your brain filters millions of pieces of information every second. But once something is emotionally relevant, it prioritizes it. And a crush makes someone emotionally relevant. Now here's where things start getting deeper. After attention comes curiosity. Your mind starts asking questions. Who is this person? What are they like? Do they like me? What kind of personality do they have? And interestingly, your brain does not always wait for real answers. Instead, it starts creating assumptions. It fills in missing information with imagination. And this is where fantasy begins. Because a crush is not just based on the real person, it is also based on the version of them your mind creates. You don't just see them as they are, you see them as your mind interprets them. And that interpretation is influenced by your emotions, your experiences, your desires, and even your loneliness or happiness at that moment. So, in a way, a crush is partly reality and partly imagination. Now, let's talk about chemistry. When you like someone, your brain releases dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical responsible for pleasure, reward, and motivation. It is the same chemical that makes you feel excited when something good happens. So, when you see your crush, when they talk to you, or even when you think about them, your brain gives you a small dopamine boost. And that feels good. Very good. So, your brain starts connecting that person with pleasure. It learns this person equals good feeling, and naturally, it wants more of it. That's why you start thinking about them again and again. It is not just emotional, it is chemical reinforcement. But dopamine is only one part of the story. There is also norepinephrine, which increases alertness and excitement. This is why you feel nervous around your crush. Your heart beats faster, your hands might get sweaty, your thoughts become slightly chaotic. You become more aware of your behavior. It feels like pressure, but also excitement. This is your nervous system reacting to emotional importance. Now let's go deeper into something very important: idealization. When you have a crush on someone, your brain tends to highlight their positive traits and ignore their flaws. This is not intentional, it is automatic. You start thinking they are more funny than they actually are, more kind than they may be, more perfect than reality. Even small things about them feel special. Why? Because your brain is trying to strengthen emotional motivation. It wants you to pursue that connection. So it enhances their image in your mind. This is why a crush often feels perfect, even when you barely know the person deeply. But this perfection is not real. It is filtered perception. Now let's talk about another powerful process: emotional projection. When you have a crush, you don't just see the person, you project your desires onto them. If you are lonely, you project companionship. If you are insecure, you project validation. If you are emotionally unfulfilled, you project emotional satisfaction. So your crush becomes a symbol of what you want emotionally. And that's why it feels so intense. Because you are not just liking a person, you are emotionally attaching meaning to them. Now, here comes one of the most important parts: obsession cycles. When you have a crush, your brain creates a loop. You think about them, you feel excited, you want more. You think about them again. This loop can become very strong because it is reinforced by dopamine. And the more you think, the stronger the neural pathways become. Your brain literally becomes more trained to think about that person. So even when you don't want to think about them, you still do. This is why crushes feel uncontrollable sometimes. But it is not magic. It is repetition plus chemistry. Now let's talk about social behavior changes. When you have a crush, your behavior changes without you realizing it. You become more conscious of your appearance. You overthink your words. You replay conversations in your mind. You imagine future scenarios. You might also feel shy, nervous, or overly confident around them depending on your personality. And this happens because your brain has marked this person as emotionally significant. So every interaction feels important. Even small things feel big. Now let's go deeper into uncertainty. One of the strongest fuels for a crush is uncertainty. When you are not sure how the other person feels about you, your brain becomes more focused on them. Because uncertainty creates mental loops. Your brain keeps trying to solve the emotional puzzle. Do they like me? What do they think about me? What if I say something wrong? What if they notice me? This uncertainty keeps your mind engaged. And engagement feels like emotional intensity. But in reality, it is just unresolved curiosity. Now, here is something very important: timing. Crushes often become stronger when you are emotionally open or vulnerable. If you are going through loneliness, boredom, stress, or emotional change, your brain becomes more sensitive to connection. So even a small positive interaction can feel very meaningful, not because the person is extraordinary, but because your emotional state is receptive. Now let's talk about imagination. One of the biggest parts of a crush is what happens in your imagination. You start creating scenarios. What if we talk more? What if we become close? What if something happens between us? These imagined situations create emotional responses in your body. You feel happiness, excitement, and sometimes anxiety, all from thoughts that are not real. But your brain reacts to imagination almost like reality. So your emotions become deeply involved in something that hasn't even happened. Now let's talk about attachment formation. If the interaction continues over time, your brain starts forming attachment. You begin associating that person with emotional reward. You look forward to seeing them. You feel happier when they are around. You feel slightly empty when they are not. And slowly, the crush becomes emotionally significant. But here's the truth: not all crushes turn into love. Some are just temporary emotional experiences that fade when your brain no longer finds the stimulation as strong. Because crushes are not always about compatibility, they are about stimulation. Now let's talk about emotional reality versus emotional illusion. A crush feels real, very real. But not everything you feel is a reflection of reality. Some of it is brain chemistry, some of it is projection, some of it is imagination. And when these layers mix together, the experience becomes powerful, but also confusing. Now let's understand something deeper. A crush teaches you more about yourself than about the other person. It shows you what you desire. It shows you what excites you. It shows you what your emotional needs are. It shows you what your mind is seeking. So in a way, a crush is not just about another person. It is also a mirror. Now let's talk about what happens when a crush fades. When the emotional intensity reduces, your brain slowly stops releasing the same level of dopamine. The excitement fades. The obsession reduces. And suddenly you start seeing the person more realistically. And sometimes you wonder, why did I feel so strongly before? But the answer is simple. Your brain was in an emotional activation state, not a permanent connection state. Now let's come to the most important realization. A crush is not something strange. It is not something magical. It is not something random. It is your brain reacting to stimulation, curiosity, chemistry, imagination, and emotional needs, all at once. And once you understand this, you stop being controlled by it. You start observing it instead of getting lost in it. And that awareness changes everything. Because instead of saying, I have a crush and I can't control it, you start saying, my brain is reacting to something. Let me understand it. And that understanding brings clarity. And clarity brings peace. Because in the end, a crush is not just about another person. It is about what is happening inside you when someone becomes important to your mind.